They say a broken clock is right twice a day, but in Garry the Prophet's case, it might be a little bit more than twice. Garry, the hero we needed but did not deserve, gave his life, potentially, to bestow upon his people the revolutionary knowledge he possesses. Or maybe they're just delusions, or knowledgeable delusions. Maybe that's a good way of phrasing it. When it comes to Garry, full name, Gerald Winkler, it's pretty standard to take what he's saying as general nonsense, scop talk, the result of far too many drugs. And while the latter may play a part in the unique flavoring of his conspiracies, at the end of V's interactions with Garry, we come face to face with something he was, in fact, correct about. After losing Garry to mysterious interlopers, we are left to ponder all those things Garry told us about the technomancers from Alpha Centauri, about the vampires, about the werewolves, and more. Were they actually true? The answer definitely surprised me, and it might just surprise you too. Heyo, it's Liddy, and welcome to Shaped by Stories, where we unpack how characters shape stories, and how stories shape us. Let's get into it. Garry the Prophet, or as his parents know him, Gerald Winkler, was once a Night City resident just like any other, until the accident. We don't know the nature of this accident, as he never really gets into it specifically, but he says that his Ripperdoc had to riddle around in his brain because of this accident. Garry claims that his Ripperdoc installed a sort of co-processor chip that apparently allows him to tap into the discussions and doings of a mysterious entity he only refers to as them. He doesn't explain to us who they are. We're kind of left to wonder, as he mentions a number of secret societies and entities in his many conspiracies. Perhaps Garry's Ripperdoc was in cahoots with them, or a secret society who knows who they are, and saw Garry as humanity's last hope. Or maybe his Ripper just scavenged parts from the garbage or through scavs. We'll probably never know. It was probably scavs. I'm putting my money on scavs. At some point following Garry's awakening to his insider knowledge, he realized that he had a job to do, and that job was to spend his every waking hour spreading the dark truth of the world to every Night City citizen who'd listen. Which isn't a very big number. Garry set up shop, which consists of a filthy mattress surrounded by food wrappers and garbage, in the alleyway next to Misty's Esoterica, or at least he's there by time V comes across him in 2077. Garry will preach until the earliest hours of the morning before turning in and sleeping until at least 1 in the afternoon, at least in my game. The techno-necromancers work hard, but Garry works harder. One has to wonder how Misty feels about Garry, considering you can hear his rants from inside her shop if you just stand there. She's probably okay with him though. Misty seems like a nice lady. I'd imagine most people who wander into her shop do so because they just stop to observe Garry. Like, maybe that number isn't high, as she herself admits. Her store doesn't get too many people coming through. But something's better than nothing, right? Garry wears a frock that looks like a garbage bag with just, like a head hole and an arm holes cut into it, which reminds me of a friend of mine who used to ride an e-scooter around Toronto who wore a garbage bag with holes in it because she got tired of having a filthy raincoat at the end of every day, every spring, with the hole just being where her face was. It's just... Anyway. Garry also has a young apprentice of sorts, an unnamed woman who we can observe sitting with him from time to time. She worries for Garry's safety, and we can overhear her telling him to be careful. If he keeps spreading Arasaka's secrets, they're gonna take him out. Garry's first rant, at least in my game, if I miss any of his rants, please let me know in the comments below. I think I got them all, but who knows, maybe there's some secret ones. Was his rant about Saburo Arasaka not being dead. He talks about immortality tags, that Saburo is undead. He frames the Arasaka family like vampires, with Saburo lying in wait in the family crypt for rejuvenation. He also says that the Arasakas got their vampiric power of undeath from the techno-necromancers of Alpha Centauri, a group entity that Garry mentions a lot, who we'll be getting into shortly. Garry also says that the advertised immortality tech of the relic is just a shroud for the real evil going on in Arasaka. This is definitely the easiest of Garry's rants to sift the truth from, and there's a lot. He's right about many things, even if his flavoring is a little off. Saburo isn't technically dead. No, not if you count his engram. And in a way, yeah, Mikoshi is sort of the family crypt of sorts, even if there's more people in there than just the Arasakas. I'm sure Hanako has plans to copy herself in there too someday anyway. I doubt it's just Saburo who's gonna be the only one to copy his consciousness, all the different endings aside. And I mean, sure, the Arasakas might not be literal vampires, but like many corpo overlords, they got many of the same classic traits. A taste for excess, looking down on those lowly humans beneath their towers. Aging slowed beyond anything we've ever seen. Just look at Hanako, she's 78 years old. Yeah, like they feed off the sheep fenced in by the corporate oligarchical machine. Also, it's interesting to note, a Mikoshi is, according to Wikipedia, a sacred religious palanquin in Shintoism. Shinto followers believe that it serves as the vehicle to transport a deity in Japan while moving between main shrine and temporary shrine, usually during a festival. That the Arasaka family crypt shares a name with this stepping stone for deities from shrine to shrine, or body to body, does suit both the vampiric viewpoint of being gods among men. I think of Dracula on the Demeter being transported in his coffin, kind of. Oh, and also the nature of Arasaka's brand of immortality. Mikoshi is a very good name. So yeah, Garry is correct here in more ways than are obvious, even after playing through the main story. Like, maybe he's not literally correct, but literal correctness is hardly as fun in fiction. Who doesn't like puzzles? Garry's next rant is about mysterious entities seeing through people's eyes without them knowing. This one's a little harder to parse, but I don't think it's that crazy. I actually think it's the most reasonable of all the things that he says. Garry says that our memories might not even be trustworthy. He says that those who have sold us our mechanical eyes very well could be looking through them. Garry described cybernetics as a blessing and a curse, that our trading in our flesh for their technology places us further in their grasp. And guess who's behind it?
Why the Titans of Entertainment in Alpha Centauri?
And also, he says that they're using their access to human eyeballs, like cameras of a reality TV show kind of, like that they show to their people as a way to entertain and distract their masses, wherever and whoever those masses are, which, you know, is not unlike entertainment in the world of Night City, or in our world too. It's all a distraction. And then poor Garry has to deal with being in the background of a picture. He looks so sad here when the girls come by and they're like, oh my god, a real conspiracy guy. Now, the thing here is that this theory on its own doesn't give us much. What he's saying about someone being able to look through someone's cybernetic eyes isn't that crazy, at least not to me. Like, why not? If somebody's got some bad malware or they caught a bug on the net, someone could use that to peer through someone's cybernetic eyes in secret. Maybe they could do some weird stuff to wipe their memory. I believe that's a quick hack V can use as well. It's even said in-game that some netrunners can hack someone's optics, like V can hack cameras, to use a person as a vantage point of sorts. So this isn't that nutty, but it's not mind-blowing either, until you connect this rant with Garry's next one. Garry's third rant is about the mysterious blue-eyed entities that he describes as reptilians. I'm assuming these are the same reptilians that the Garrys of today discuss. Basically, the rich and powerful are, not unlike the reptilians of 2025 conspiracy lore, the elites, the rich, the powerful. Garry includes President Myers in this as well. They also descend from dinosaurs, he says, of the Antarctic ice sheet, which, like, I'm not a paleontologist, but Antarctica in the age of dinosaurs was, from what I understand, way warmer back in the days of dinosaurs. It was lush, it was not like this frozen wasteland. Australia used to be like a super close neighbor to Antarctica back in this time. There were tons of fascinating dinosaurs here. Here I go, I'm going on my dinosaur rant. There's tons of fascinating dinosaurs here. Pretty much all of them evolved these incredible adaptations to survive what would have been harsh, dark winters there. One of my favorite dinosaurs, Leiolinosaura, displays some of these unique adaptations, namely in its large eyes. Some paleontologists believe that it would have helped them to see in the pitch black, long night of those Antarctic winters. Big eyeballs equals big vision. So now I'm just thinking, Gary, do you mean like the dinosaurs thawed out of the ice sometime in the last 65 million years? Or like, do you have knowledge that Antarctica was always frozen and paleontologists are wrong? I need to know this now. He also says that the reptilians are still coming from Antarctica. There's a lot of undiscovered Gary Antarctica lore that we will just never, ever know, and it makes me sad. But he's not done. Guess who made the reptilians from the dinosaurs? Or maybe who made the dinosaurs? The scientists of Alpha Centauri. Not the techno-necromancers this time, it's a bit different. So one could describe Rosalind Myers, Saburo Arasaka, Lucius Rhine, and any number of the cyberpunk elite that we could meet as a snake, I think. I think many people already do. This is an insult to snakes everywhere. But in that sense, sure, Gary is not super wrong about comparing them to reptilian entities. And vampires do share a lot of ancient ties with more reptilian features, like the Lamia of Greek mythology, I believe. So, sure, Gary, I'm picking up what you're putting down here. But the blue eyes bit is definitely ringing alarm bells. Throughout 2077, there's an interesting presence of characters with glowing blue eyes. These blue eyes, sure, they could be argued to be the result of having optics installed. We see pretty much every character in the game have a flash of blue eyes when they're transferring eddies around or data, which makes me assume that it glows when there's a connection of sorts, a data transfer, if you know what I'm saying. The most well-known character with these eyes is Mr. Blue Eyes. We don't know his real name, if he even has one, but Mr. Blue Eyes only appears in some of the most important sections of the game, albeit very sneakily, most of the time. The Sun ending is where he appears most blatantly, you get to talk to him, there's the whole thing with like the Crystal Palace. I'll get into theories surrounding what that whole bit is for in his video, which is coming, I swear. The conspiracy canyon with this guy just gets wider and wider. Mr. Blue Eyes most of the time will first appear in the Peralez questline, standing from a distance and watching V's final conversation with Jefferson. Now this takes place after V discovers this strange mind control, memory erasure going on with Jefferson and his wife, which, if you take into account a number of NCPD mission shards, as well as Sandra Dorsett's questline, is likely an operation spearheaded by the mysterious NightCorp. In fact, right before we can have this conversation with Jefferson, V gets a really invasive call from a mysterious, unidentified figure who sounds like Mr. Blue Eyes. This person warns them to back off. They seem to know everything about V. There's this implication that they've been watching them. And also, when I say invasive, this call basically glitches V's vision. It kind of brings V to their knees a bit. Like, they're directly tapping into V and they're physically letting V know that they're in there. At least that was my take on it. It was very creepy. I was like, ugh, the first time that happened. This is not unlike what Gary claims about those
techno-necromancers from Alpha Centauri!
Being able to see through people's eyes, as well as alter their memories and their perceptions of reality. Also worth noting, Mr. Blue Eyes appears twice in Phantom Liberty, should you choose to send Songbird to the moon. Songbird describes a man who fits his description with those trademark blue eyes, offering her this chance to get to space, to save her life. He basically books her ticket for her. The other thing, too, is that she says that he seems to know things about her that aren't common knowledge, stuff that she's never shared with anyone. This isn't unlike V's experience with Mr. Blue Eyes. Also, Songbird describes Mr. Blue Eyes as a proxy figure, which is interesting. Some people theorize that Mr. Blue Eyes and NightCorp are the techno-necromancers from Alpha Centauri that Gary speaks of. But what if they're just the proxies for the techno-necromancers, as Gary speaks of the blue-eyed reptilians of being? Maybe their real overlords exist in another realm, An angel heaven, perhaps, peering through those blue eyes, controlling what they say and what they do. I'm digging this hole deeper. Hold on to that thought, because Garry may actually be onto something here. The fourth conspiracy Garry gets into is that cyberspace is actually pandemonium. Now, if we take the meaning of pandemonium from John Milton's Paradise Lost, pandemonium is the home of all demons. It's kind of what the word itself means when you break it down to its Greek parts. So yeah, Garry is equating the net to hell, which isn't actually as original as it may sound. You can hear a conspiracy on Moral Rock Radio, for instance, from Maximum Mike, discussing the idea that Rach Bartmoss discovered the net rather than the net being man-made, and that the net is in fact hell. There's more to this that has to do with some references to Spider Murphy as well, but I will get into that in her video. Garry says things about souls suffering in the net as well, not super unlike what we know of engrams and Soul Killer and how horrific it is. Even the AIs in the net, if you count them and how Rabbids really screwed them up, seem to be suffering in their own way. There's a whole lot of screaming beyond the black wall, at least that's how I'd describe those noises, which I'll play here, you let me know what you think. But Garry also says that the Alpha Centauri beings are the ones who opened the gates of this hell, and like that part's definitely interesting, because that leaves things open to a lot of interpretations. Some theorize that Garry's referring to Alt's creation of Soul Killer, and how that opened the gates of hell, so to speak, in the net. Not even just for those who were soul killed, but even when it comes to Rabbids. Rabbids was built on the back of Soul Killer by Rach Bartmoss. But some also see this as a hint towards Project Cynosure, how that project basically sought to leash AIs, only to really risk flying too close to the sun. We see where that research very likely led with Songbird's power over the Black Wall, or perhaps the Black Wall's power over her. Which leads me to the last of Garry's rants, which is by far the most bonkers, not because of what he's saying, but because the wackiest part of it has some actual literal truth in it. Werewolves. Alright, so in my alt video, I was like, no, there's no way that's real. And the comment section of that video blew my mind because, yeah, no, it turns out that Garry's right, there are werewolves. But before I get to the literal werewolf part, I have to talk about the more figurative view of Garry's werewolf rant. So Garry claims that nomads, or at least some of them, are werewolf-type creatures who shift with the full moon and roam the Badlands with a thirst for blood. Garry says that the nomads became werewolves after exposure to an alien substance that was initially sought by Arasaka, aka the vampire elite, in order to turn Saburo's enemies into werewolves. But things got out of hand, the nomads got infected, and where was this ship from?
From Alpha Centauri!
Saburo couldn't get this weapon after the crash of the ship, so that's why we don't see werewolves all over the Corpo world. Garry explains, too, that among the werewolves is a mysterious Queen Lilith.
Her voice of ice, Queen Lilith. She was calm, but at the cost of her humanity.
Remember her? But he also says that the werewolves are the only truly free entities from the reptilians. So I guess they have that going for them. And nomads are basically free from the Corpo overlords, at least more so than other people are. Okay, so figurative take first. There's an interesting theory out there that suggests that this is all an allegory for Rabbids somehow. That the term werewolves refers to the AIs who were infected with Rabbids after the data crash, that they go around consuming everything, destroying, doing whatever they want. They're free, after all, because of Rabbids. And Queen Lilith, as I got into in my Alt Cunningham video, is potentially the same entity as Lilith, this very malevolent-seeming rogue AI that we can meet in that one Maelstrom Cyber Psycho quest. Or at the very least, Alt is probably related to her in some way. That's another rabbit hole over there in that video if you're interested. As for the Saburo Arasaka wanting to have control over the werewolf virus, you could definitely argue that that could refer to Soul Killer being a sibling program sort of Rabbids. And I mean, who wouldn't want to have control over Rabbids? Maybe he literally was at some point seeking control of rabbits. That could be possible. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that take and what you think there could be with the figurative side of the werewolf allegory. But now for the other take, the literal werewolf take. Apparently, in lore, this is true. As posted by CS Grizzly on Reddit, there actually are Badlands werewolves in the tabletop lore. But not even just tabletop lore anymore, because there's some hints that it's canon in 2077's continuation. First of all, in Grizzly's own words, Tales from the Forlorn Hope is an R. Talsorian published adventure book for Cyberpunk 2020, telling about the various stories and individuals associated with the 2020s bar, the Forlorn Hope. Now I'm just thinking of Camp Forlorn Hope in New Vegas, and then I remember I should really play New Vegas again. Anyway, apparently, if you take this list of non-canon sourcebooks into account that Grizzly points to, the omission of Tales from the Forlorn Hope from that list implies that it is indeed considered canon. A lot of the characters from the Forlorn Hope book actually do appear, as Grizzly points out, in Johnny's Never Fade Away flashback in 2077, which is definitely an interesting creative choice that feels very intentional. There's 6 total characters that Grizzly found that many people might not know about. This includes Yishen, the vending machine girl. Now, the other thing that is mentioned in this sourcebook is the Badlands werewolves. And yes, they're legitimately human wolf creatures. I'll link what CS Grizzly found so you can check the pages referenced yourself. Basically, these werewolves are said to be biological constructs, presumably corpo experiments that somehow got loose in the wasteland. Which does sort of connect a bit to the Joanne Koch gig that you can take on for Dino Dinovich, with her relatively unspecified experiments on nomad populations. There's also some shards you can find surrounding her experiments in the city center, how Biotechnica is trying to sweep it under the rug. Like, is there solid proof that Joanne Koch is behind the werewolves? Not that I could find, but like, Garry was right, confirmed about the most ridiculous thing, and it is, yeah, werewolves are real. They're out there. They're out there, guys. The other thing too is that Grizzly found a shard by the Sunset Motel with some of Garry's werewolf ramblings. And Maximum Mike also talks about the werewolf theory too, apparently. So yeah, the star ending could be, in fact, the most grisly ending of all. The other thing too, I have never actually heard this for myself, but some people say that when they're just sitting out in the Badlands and if there's no music and you just listen to the ambiance at night, some people hear some really strange howls. I can't say I've had that, but if you have, let me know. That's creepy. That would be cool. So anyway, again, there's even more truth to the things that Garry continues to say, even if it's not in his delivery. But there is one more rant, one more theory that stands out above the rest. Garry the Prophet's last attempt at opening the world's eyes before he is taken from us all too soon. Garry's werewolf rant rubs some nearby nomads the wrong way. So long as V saves Garry from harm, you open up the quest, The Prophet's Song, where Garry is determined to prove to V that there are some secret society workings going on that affect the whole world. Garry explains his connection to them, saying that all he shares he knows through that code processor his Ripper installed in his head. He says that he can prove it to V, and he sends them to a clandestine location in Watson's factory district, not far from the All Foods plant. Johnny and V are both kind of like, but at the same time, it's definitely an interesting idea to just see how this goes, so they wait in secret for the main event. Hiding behind some crates, they see some Maelstrom goons roll up, followed by some mysterious corpos. And what they say is as follows.
What says the Wolf Father to the Moon Mother as she descends to Earth?
I have protected the realm of man and shadow, but today they are protected by our children, whose name is Patricide.
In the age of his failure, he became lost in the forest.
Lilith has concealed the 10th circle from the ancestors' eyes.
Carpe noctem lamia.
Dicit diem execrari.
Now, this seems super weird at first, of course, but there's a really interesting theory about this exchange, posted by a since-deleted Reddit user proposing that this dialogue in fact foreshadows the events of Phantom Liberty. Garry was behind Phantom Liberty the whole time. The deleted OP suggests that Songbird is the Moon Mother, as Songbird does technically descend from orbit on Space Force 1, and then she wants to go back to the moon. In the comments, Reddit user Clarence P. Walters makes a really good point about the fact that the mysterious blue-eyed figure is the one who booked that flight for her to get to the moon. We just don't know why. Songbird can't afford to let any suspicions overrule her here, or else she'll die. So she's taking this mystery hand being offered to her without really recognizing that she may indeed be a victim of something just as bad as what Myers had planned for her on the moon. More on this in a second. The deleted OP also suggests that the Wolf Father is Kurt Hansen, as he is the father of sorts of Barghest, the mythical demonic vampire dog creature. Also, when it comes to what patricide refers to, it could be that Barghest, as suggested by OP, rose from the bones of Militech after Hansen basically severed the head of their operative body in Night City. Militech was Barghest's corporate father. There's also the idea that Solomon Reed is the individual, said to be lost in the forest, lost in the reeds, in the age of his failure. And I think that that's plausible because Reed is devastated about failing to keep his promises to Somi. He struggles throughout Phantom Liberty with letting her down, with letting himself down. Lilith and that reference to Lamia, as well as the whole reference to the 10th circle of hell and all the Latin, I'm assuming, I get into that deeper in Alt's video, connects back to Garry's numerous references to reptilian vampires. Lamia also really fused the two together, being lady, serpent, vampire, child-eating creatures. And one could definitely take the reference to Night as a huge hint to NightCorp. If you crack the shard that those corpos have that talks about executing Project Oracle, there's a reference to puppets and all kinds of other things. The Pyramid of Zalua being not unlike Mikoshi in appearance, at least if you take a look at reconstructive art that archaeologists have done of the Pyramid of Cholula. Again, I look deeper into that in my alt video. But there's also more here. If you look at the shard in Sandra Dorsett's quests, on that shard, we see a reference to Operation Carpe Noctem. Remember, Carpe Noctem Lamia is what the mysterious corpo lady, Jane Doe, said in that meeting with Maelstrom. The contents of this chip detail the successful testing phases of an AI-type program or entity, depending on how you see AIs, that can basically influence people's minds. And it's heavily implied, based on what we find in the Peralez quests, that that is what has been used on the couple. Like, some people even theorize that Elizabeth and Jefferson's daughter isn't even real, she's just a fake memory implanted in their head. That's how messed up Elizabeth and Jefferson are. It is a very sleeper horror type quest. Remember what I said about Mr. Blue Eyes? That these entities from Alpha Centauri are peering through the eyes of these blue-eyed reptilians? Songbird, a net-running expert comparable to, dare I say, Alt Cunningham, describing Mr. Blue Eyes as a proxy. What is he a proxy for? I think this all has to do with the AIs beyond the Black Wall and the Black Wall itself, but most of all with the mysterious Lilith. Lilith, or Queen Lilith, who was once human but no longer so. Lilith, who may very well be the digital remnants of Alt Cunningham. Are the Black Wall AIs the technomancers from Alpha Centauri serving their queen? Some people also believe that Erebus, the AI we can turn into a weapon from Phantom Liberty, sounds creepily like Mr. Blue Eyes himself. I tried to verify that, but I can't find the voice actor to see if they're the same. If you know, please let me know. But what I did find is that Mitch and Mr. Blue Eyes have the same voice actor, which is crazy, I never would have noticed. But another hint I've heard of in the cyberpunk community, comes from a number of players having an encounter with civilians in Dogtown, rambling about how Mother is watching. There's graffiti apparently too saying a very similar line to this. The people I've seen say that they've had this encounter believe that this could be a side effect of Dogtown's proximity to Project Cynosure. We can read from the project notes how the Black Wall almost seemed to whisper to people to invade their brains even after they disconnected from the net. Who knows how far the Black Wall can actually reach? But either way, this is certainly freaky shit. The idea that the techno-necromancers are just rogue AIs is, in my opinion, very believable, but definitely gonna keep searching for more evidence. So what does this all mean when we put it all together and fully connect it back to all the things that Garry has said? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that Garry knew about the events of Phantom Liberty like a legitimate prophet, like it doesn't mean that, but if we pry apart the secret cryptic message and we connect it to the things we find out in the Sandra Dorset quest and the questionable things going on with NightCorp and the Perales quests and the mysterious Mr. Blue Eyes and all these interconnecting hints, number one, it does heavily hint to the possibility that NightCorp has their hands in a lot more cookie jars than we realize in the cyberpunk world, that Phantom Liberty might not just be a Militech-centric DLC, there might be some NightCorp lurking in the background there, extending its claws just to get Songbird for who knows what reason. Definitely something to do with her net running skills. There's talk about NightCorp wanting to get a bunch of net runners to the moon, including Lucy from Edge Runners, but more on that in another video, because this iceberg. But it also hints to the fact that Garry's coprocessor might genuinely be legit. It's just fuzzy and it's in the mind of somebody who probably didn't get the medical care he needed from his accident, whatever it was. Sure, there's definitely some things lost in translation, but there's a lot of things that Garry has said that aren't seeming so crazy. Considering the fact that he was right about that meeting taking place and where it was and how strange it would be. Not only that, but when we decode all of it and examine all that stuff, including Sandra Dorset's quest, a little closer, a lot of things start to line up. I think that it's not so crazy to say that Garry the Prophet, Gerald Winkler, was Alt Cunningham's, Lilith the Rogue AI's, most dangerous adversary in her likely quest to start the AI Armageddon. If that is indeed where the plot is going for Cyberpunk Orion, I think it's a really fun theory. I think Lilith and NightCorp and whoever else is behind the whole thing, maybe it's not Lilith, knows that Garry knows too much, that he's dangerous. He is the hero we need, but just won't recognize. So what happens? Well, like so many great people before him, we lose Garry before his time. When we rush back to Garry to tell him what we saw, what we now know, we return to his distraught apprentice, waving a sign around, frantic, distressed. Garry's been taken, she says, and he's not coming back. Garry has been taken by blue-eyed suits. Oh my god, the techno-necromancers have taken him because he knew the truth. This man was onto something. But just what he was onto, well, it leaves even Johnny Silverhand looking a little more concerned than we're used to. Garry's apprentice requests V's financial aid in building a statue in Garry's memory. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough money to pay the full fee because I was giving Garry all my money in the first place. But should you donate enough funds, the next time you visit Garry's alley, you will see a stunning mural that apparently cost over 30,000 eddies, apparently? So, whenever we're feeling a little bit lost in Night City without our prophet to guide us, we can always look to his memory to light our way. Thank you so much for watching. Oh god, the Garry video. I keep saying I'm gonna make the Mr. Blue Eyes video, but in looking into Garry and what he has to say, I had to make this video. We're building up to Mr. Blue Eyes. Every week I find out some new crazy thing with this guy. Gary's just the stepping stone of this week. I don't even know where I'm going with the next one. Probably Peralez in the stream of Mr. Blue Eyes stuff. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of Gary and all the things he has to say. I want to know, because like, this is the only way we're ever gonna dig deep into this mess. Reddit and the comment sections help me make these conspiratory videos, so thank you very much to everybody just for sharing your knowledge. It helps a lot, and it also makes me even more confused in the best way possible. Thank you so much to my members. Don't worry, members, I will not tell people that you are all necromancers from Alpha Centauri. Your secret's safe with me. And just thank you for every single like, comment, everything. I really appreciate it, guys. This was a lot of fun, and I'm excited for the next video that's gonna break my brain. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.